When I came to, I was just completely disoriented. I just didn't know where I was or what I was doing. All I remember was a lot of shouting. And then a police officer came and told me I'd been arrested for trespassing and breaking and entering. Apparently, the police officer had been waiting at the crypt, and when I went to get in the pipe, he just grabbed me and tried to pull me off the pipe and inadvertently just knocked me for 6. Well, someone in one of the residential buildings near the crypt had spotted me trying to get in, and they waited for me to do it a couple of times, and then they'd informed the police. And then the police said, you know, how should we contact your parents? And that was the point. I just broke down. I was very tired and weak, and I hadn't realised how little I'd been eating. On top of that, I hadn't eaten anything cooked for over 2 months. Well, eventually I was tracked down by my father's sister, Julie, who, unbeknown to me, had just moved to a flat in Rotherhithe. I was taken to a doctor who said I was undernourished and suffering from trauma, and I needed food, sleep and rest. Well, I was adopted by Julie, who had first come to London on hearing about my mother's disappearance and then mine. Yeah, she had a flat in Rotherhithe, and she moved me in once she'd come and found me. Well, I was really lucky. If it hadn't been for her, I suppose I'd been put in care. I never made it to university. I think she adopted me after about a year, although I can't remember exactly when.
Nettie was extremely lucky. Under the Children's Act of 1948, it became the duty of a local authority to receive the child into care in cases of abuse or neglect. Had this been her fate, it is unlikely she would have had the same opportunities in terms of continuing her education and development.
So I got to go back to school, and then college, and finally university. UCL. I read politics. Chip off the old block, I suppose. Well, it was just my way of trying to make sense of things. But once I'd finished school, college and university, finally, I decided I'd try and trace her. At the time of my arrest, when the police realised who I was, they asked me a whole load of questions with this big furore, like who was my mother and where were her friends and what was she doing. Just couldn't answer any of it. I went to an official agency, but there were no leads unless I hired a private detective. I decided against that. Well, I thought, if she doesn't want to be discovered, then I should really respect that privacy. And on top of that, I had this nagging worry, this fear that somehow I might put her life in danger. Well, I'm retired now, but I've spent most of my working life in universities as an academic, teaching, written a few books. I've got 3 fantastic children, all grown up now then.
Nettie Barnshaw is now a retired academic. She has lived what she describes as a full and productive life, and currently resides just outside of London, in northwest Kent. However, the impact of her abandonment and traumatic childhood still runs deep.
The one thing that's always resonated with me was the motto of the RAF squadron of which my dad was a member. Foi pour devoir, fidelity into duty. It described both my parents' sense of drive and motivation perfectly, and mine.
St Pancras Crypt has since been cleared out, with a few indicators of its original function still present. Some of the walls have been knocked through, and it is now used as a contemporary art gallery. But its history as a fugitive sanctum remains hidden.
While there's a country lane, wherever there's a cottage small beside a field of grain, there'll always be a busy street. Wherever there's a turning wheel, a million marching feet.
Red, white, and blue, what does it mean to you? Surely